Okay, guys, welcome to the Incredible Hulk podcast again. We are discussing the season 2 story called Vendetta Road. Yeah, it was actually the last episode of season 2. Of course, it starred Bill Bixby as David Banner, Lou Ferrigno as the Incredible Hulk, and Jack Colvin as Jack McGee. Co-starring Ron Lombard as Ray Floyd, Christina Hart as Cassie Floyd, and Morgan Woodward as Ben Madrid. Written by Justin Egerton and directed by John McPherson. And joining me to talk about this is my friends Sue and Alex. How are you both?
Rawr.
You sound like you're in good form there. Right.
And happy birthday, Bill Bixby.
Bill Bixby, yes. As of recording, it was a few days ago. When we're recording this, so just for posterity, the date when it was his birthday was the 22nd of January 2019, and he would have been 85 years old had he lived, which would have been a good age. Sadly, that's not the case. So this is for you, Bill, in your memory, as all these episodes are, but particularly as it was around your birthday. So we kick off the opening scene, and David arrives at the gas station to use the bathroom. However, the guy there has been a little bit awkward. He says, I think you have to buy something, in order to use our facilities. So he goes and buys himself a little can of soda.
That is so annoying when you're on a road trip and you stop somewhere to use the loo.
Yeah.
And like these in California, there were all sorts of little restaurants and things. And you'd be going like 100 miles down the road, and there'd only be this one little restaurant, and you'd have to stop and use the bathroom, but then they'd make you buy something. It's just, that was annoying.
Yeah, and they had to give him he even got like a big key, didn't he? Like it gives him the key to open up the bath. And it's got like a big wooden key ring on it with men or male written on it for the male toilet. Yeah. Just in case there's any confusion. So David goes in there and he has a bit of a clean up, a shave. As this is going on, of course, what would you call it, Sue? A buggy, I suppose. It's not really a Jeep. It's like a buggy, isn't it?
It's called a dune buggy.
A dune buggy. Yeah.
Also quite popular in Southern California and in the dunes of Northern California.
Yeah.
It's a desert vehicle, and it's super cool. It's like one of the fun sort of cool cars, sort of.
I'd love to have
from
a ride
the 70s.
Yeah.
60s and 70s.
Yeah, they're pretty good. It's pretty cool little cars. You can imagine that going along on the beach as well, like the beach buggies. Yeah. Yep,
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Quite right.
Yeah, so it's a groovy little vehicle, and it's got some speed on it. Anyway, they arrive at the same gas station, and the service guy comes out and say, "Can you fill this up?" and all that. While he's distracted doing that, Ray has got a stick of dynamite out and is lighting it in obviously to blow up the gas station.
Yeah, I mean, he chooses a really good way of blowing up a gas station, because they don't blow up when you just run a truck into them like it happens in Michael Bay films. You got to actually use dynamite.
Yeah, but I think because it was so close to the gas pump where it was put, it probably would have a knock-on effect and blow the whole place up, I should think.
Everything up,
The pumps would go, and that would be it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, as that's happening, David comes out, of course, and as they're just about to go, and they see him, and she goes, "Quick, get out of the way! Get out of the way!" And he sees the dynamite, but of course he leaps to escape it, but knocks himself out, and they go back.
No, he trips. He trips over.
Trips on something.
Looks up and instead of looking at his feet, he looks up and he trips over a floor jack,
That's
which
it.
is
And
how they elevate cars.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has a little head wound and he's sort of unconscious but so they say Cassie says, look, we can't leave him here. We can't leave him here. Go, you know, you've got to get him. You've got to get him. He's going to die. So they go back. They get him in. They bundle him into the back of the buggy, and off they flee. And moments later, there's a bloody great mushroom cloud of an explosion behind them, where the thing goes up. That's a hell of an explosion. And bearing in mind, that's a real explosion. That wasn't CGI. You know,
it was like 50 feet of flame and
oh yeah,
explosion, and who knows about the show.
That was one hell of a pyrotechnic. That was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they get away anyway, luckily, just in time. Meanwhile, McGee is on the phone objecting to his boss, Mark, having to take up the story, and investigate about Ray and Cassie because they've been sort of like tagged as the modern day Bonnie and Clyde. So he agrees to under protest to check them out. And then they're at the local sheriff's station, and they've been tracking, like, they've got like a map where they've been tracking like all the like the little, they pinned it, haven't they? And they've got like all the whereabouts of all the gas stations that have been blown up, targeted by Ray, you know. And so they're on his tail. But it's taking a bit of time, you know. But David comes round then, and he's being helped by Cassie. And he's introduced to them both by name, but then he's told, like, you know, you can go, you know. So he's heading off with all intents and purposes of leaving the story in a way, but that gets cut short, doesn't it, Sue?
Yeah, definitely cut short.
Because someone's firing at him with a gun.
Yeah, he's under the gun, as it were, and there's a bunch of people.
They're hiding in the bushes, aren't they?
Yeah, I can't remember if they had silencers on their gun or what.
They're the problem, aren't they? They're the Westco company that all the problems are rising from. All these guys.
Yeah, and apparently they killed. What's his name? The guy, the young guy's father.
Ray's father. Yeah, that's right.
Ray's father.
So this is why he's out for revenge, and he's blowing up all their gas stations. So that's kind of like the sort of his motivation, you know.
Yeah, and I don't remember if it was Ben Madrid or
he works for
Balding or one of those guys who was like shooting at him anyway.
No, Madrid wasn't shooting at him, but some of the sort of like the I suppose the security personnel of Westco were doing it, you know.
Yep.
But anyway, David has to end up, you know, running back and gets picked up again by Ray. So he's back in the story again with them, the three of them, and they speed off, and they arrive at a cabin in the woods. This little cabin.
There's always a little cabin.
Yeah, a nice little cabin. I'd like to live there. Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as no one's shooting at it, obviously. But you know.
That's a lot. Yeah.
But Cassie starts becoming sick. So they help her inside the cabin, but they're watched by a young boy who later goes and snitches on them at the sheriff's station.
Well, again, I mean, it is, you know, again, just like on the internet, you know, they mention a few things that's pretty funny. Of course, you have, you know, Jack McGee this time brought in by Banner to help the reporter. And, of course, just like you did in the 70s, you have a lot of, you know, really good character actors, especially the villain of the piece, you know, at the end. He's always, yeah, he was you know, he's always been either a bad guy or a very confused good guy that ends up being bad. So he rarely played a nice guy. He rarely played a wholesome character. He always either played the bad guy or he played the confused, good guy, but his actions end up being bad, and he's the one in the in the cowboy suit, and at the end of the episode where the secretary finally yells at him, answer some of these calls because he's in the press now
Yeah.
for all the shady things that he did, and he always played that character, always, no matter what show it was, no matter what movie, no matter what TV movie he got. I hope that's how he wanted to get typecast, because he always played that. And he was a little whiny too. Not exactly whiny, but like on the on the cusp of it.
Yes, yeah, he was a bit, yeah. And sort of southern accent drawl in this one. I don't know if that was his drawl, rather.
Yeah, so no, he put that on there for the character.
I don't know, because
but he always played that kind of I guess they'd call it, sniveling or whatever. He always played that type of character.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, and he wasn't a bad actor. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not. And the other memorable parts are the Hulk with the hillbillies, and I don't know if they were, trying to make fun a little bit of the Dukes of Hazzard, which was also on the network. Because as you know, that was another, popular thing, the Convoy, the CBs, the Dukes of Hazzard type of, show and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's that happens later on, of course, in this. But as Ray opens up to David about what his motivation is here. He tells him about his avenging his dad. I believe, and Westco was behind it, and he got blown up. And David urges Ray to get an attorney, but he said, they don't want to know really, and they charge $50 just to see them, and all that kind of thing.
And he didn't think that it would do any good, because didn't he say something like the Westco owns judges, owns courts and stuff?
Yeah, that's about the police. I think it was about the police. I think they were like, in their pockets or something.
Oh, the police, yeah.
The local police, yeah.
Right.
And he also said the attorney, wouldn't even entertain him, costing too much just to go and get a consultation.
Well, the characters' names that he did were the producers. It was the last names of the producers. So I guess that was a funny little in-joke there.
That was often Kenneth Johnson did that. I remember in some of the commentaries I heard, he was often like throwing in the names of the production staff in there every time he could,
Yeah, just like a lot of TV shows, even a couple nowadays after it's like a 40-year-old joke now, where they go, 555, even though there's no 555, phone number, because they don't want to give out a real number.
Right.
That's right. They have to use.
They do the 5, because there was a couple of really campy movies that actually gave out real telephone numbers, and they had to go back and either blur it or disconnect the number, because
otherwise people would be ringing it up.
Yeah, so.
And they'd be phoning it. Yeah. Now, of course, because that little boy tipped them off, he said because he saw them at the cabin. The police now have arrived in a convoy at the cabin, but the Westco guys are there as well, ready to ambush. They're in the wings.
Right.
And of course, in the just before that, Ray is buggered off again. In his group, left David and Cassie there. So you get the old megaphone and say, "Come out with your hands up." And so David and Cassie do. But Westco, of course, are trigger happy and start shooting.
Yep.
So they have to run back in the cabin and take cover. And the whole place is going nuts out there because they're all Westco and the police are shooting at each other. And there's bullets raining down everywhere. And it hits one of the oil lamps or something in the cabin and causes a fire. Cassie gets shot in the shoulder and falls down. Takes a good hit there.
So now she's not only sick, but she's shot.
She's shot as well. I mean, she's not having a good time, really. Yeah.
No.
And David's trying to help her, and bullets are going all over the place, and he hulks out.
And he turns green. Yay!
And he's mean. He's super mean. And there he is, and he gets her out because he busts through the back of the cabin. The whole bloody thing falls down, and in the chaos of all the shooting, they get away. You see, yeah, unscathed.
Yep.
Which brings us to the hillbilly scene. Which is it was a comic relief moment, really, wasn't it? You know, after the madness.
Kinda. It was. I mean, they were trying to make moonshine, and
yeah.
But it was anyway.
Going, what are you doing with that girl? Leave her alone, you know.
Yep. And so they tried to push the Hulk around, and he just, bonks them together, clicks their heads together, pushes one, and he goes flying. And
Hulk likes bowling.
Yeah,
he likes bowling.
The guys put the barrel over the guy, didn't he? And knocks him flying, swats him like a fly. Yeah.
And he bowls him like a bowling ball, like Alex was saying.
Hurls the other guy into the vat of moonshine. That funny guy that was making all the funny faces. He was gurning, you know.
Yeah.
What are you doing, boy? What are you doing with that woman, boy? You know, the still southern accent. I thought it was really funny. And anyway, they end up buggering off because they think, well, I think we're at a loss here, lads. Let's just run. Flee. So the Hulk takes her up and that, and he ends up changing back to Banner. Ray, in the meantime, is trying to find them in the Jeep, in their buggy. Eventually does. You know, as Banner's normal again. He doesn't see anything. And rescues them both again. So we're back to the three of them again, you see.
Yep.
Yeah. So
now we've come to the headquarters of Wesco, and they're troubled, and they are, trying to decide what to do, and they just figure, and then someone alerts them to the fact that
it's David. That's right. They seek shelter, the three of them, in this warehouse because there's a storm outside in the evening.
Yeah.
And David sneaks out and he finds a payphone outside. So he rings the office, and McGee, who happens to be at the office, picks up the phone, but doesn't know.
Oh, that's right. He did talk to McGee. That's right. It was like, oh my gosh, is McGee going to recognize his voice? What's going on?
But he doesn't, apparently, because the phone's the phone line's bad because of the storm, so he doesn't quite pick up the whole message. But
so close.
It was very close, yeah. I like it when those little moments happen. You think, is he going to find him out,
Yeah.
But he basically says, like the refinery, he's going to the refinery, he's going to blow it up. And McGee sort of gets most of the message, enough to sort of say, well, I'm going to head to the refinery and all that. And Ray, when he goes back in, Ray's confronts him. He says, look, so he tells him what he did. And he's trying to persuade him not to go ahead with it, but he's not listening, Ray's very stubborn.
Yep.
he's set on doing it,
Yeah. He's got the revenge. I mean, this is his vendetta.
That's right. Yeah.
This is his he's pursuing this with everything he's got.
That's right. And so it cuts to the next day at the refinery. It's a huge complex. I don't know where they shot that, but it was an amazing sight. And Ben Madrid is there, and that other rotter turns up. I can't remember that character's name. The guy that's pulling all the strings. I think he was responsible for his father's death. The guy with the cowboy hat.
Ben Madrid.
No, the other guy with dark hair. The one that Alex was talking about.
Hang on.
But they don't get on.
Hang on a second. I'll find it.
He's the
John Fielding?
No.
No, the other, another main character in it. I don't think
Greg Bantam? Spalding?
No, Fielding. It was Fielding. That's right. Yeah, Fielding.
Okay, yeah. So it was John Fielding.
Yeah, he's the baddie, really, isn't he? Yeah.
Yep.
And because Ben Madrid isn't really that. He isn't a bad egg, really. I think he's been duped. I think But Ray is meanwhile has arrived outside the sort of perimeter of the refinery. He's cutting a hole in the fence to get in, and Cassie reveals to Ray that she's pregnant.
Yep.
And that's why she was having all this sickness, Westco arrived.
Good reason.
And Westco arrived, those the thugs, and Ray has to heads to the refinery, and then they struggle and try and grab David and handcuff him, and sort of get a little bit heavy-handed with Cassie, and he's shouting out, "She's pregnant, stop it," kind of thing, and this.
Yeah.
And he hulks out and throws them around like ragdoll.
Hulk out number 2. And this one was really, or was it this one, or was it the first one that was full face and it was a nice transition?
Yeah, that was the first one in the cabin. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was his Bill's halfway makeup bit for a few seconds.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Anyway,
that was a good Hulk out. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one was just more like just see the eyes and then you see the shirt go and then he's up. It's very quick. So he ends up like roughing them up a wee bit, but leaves Cassie there. So I'm not quite sure what the outcome of that was because they're still there, the guards, and Cassie's left there as the Hulk goes in to get Ray. So I just wondered how they didn't like have a go at her again. we don't see the outcome of that. But anyway. It starts getting, it hots up now soon, doesn't it? Because Ray's got the dynamite out there and he's going to blow the bloody place up.
Yep, and he found a nice sort of spot between 2 huge tanks, and he was gonna and right on top of the piping. It was a cool spot. I mean, they've had lots of those sort of shows by the pipes, by that stuff. Anyway, that's not the first time I've seen that particular part of Los Angeles used.
I wonder where that was, Sue, that place. That was a huge complex.
It is, but it's used for about, it was used all the way through the 70s and 80s. And anyway, it's a good set, and so it was like, oh, I recognize that, and then I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, Ray had chosen this spot really carefully, and you could see that it was going to not only take out both of the tanks on either side, but like the whole thing. It was just going to be freaking massive. Anyway,
that would have been a huge.
Yeah. Anyway, because of her, Cassie's, what was going on with her, the Hulk knows that he has to take care of this, so he just kind of rips the fence to shreds.
Yes.
And walks in and grabs, like sees the dynamite, grabs it, tries to put his hand on it, and it burns his hand. And when he lifts up his hands, you could see oh, that must smart. But then he just hucks it in the air like a football, like for all he's worth, and it just went way high and explodes.
Yeah, luckily it explodes in the air and doesn't do any damage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he stops that from happening.
Yep.
And sorts out that Fielding guy and throws him in into a mud pool or something.
Yeah, Howard Morton was the actor's name. and he was in a lot of.
Howard Norton, was it?
I believe it was Howard Morton.
Howard
And he was
Morton,
in,
that's right.
he was in the original One Day at a Time, and he was in Give Me a Break, and he always was a character actor. He always was doing the same role. So I guess this one, in a way, was a slight stretch for him. But I always love at the end of the show where the secretary's yelling at him a little bit because he wants to hide. He's all over the news, and he wants to hide.
He doesn't face it, does he? You know.
Yeah, so he thought he was going to get away with being ultra corporate raider, and it didn't quite work.
Yeah, because Ben Madrid, finally sees the press and gives a confession, I guess, in a way. He spilled the beans anyway on the corruptness of it.
Yeah,
and that tears down that guy's empire, as you say, and that's why he's gone into meltdown, and he won't take any calls and stuff. He's been that's it. The whole enterprise has crumbled around him, and so the Hulk saves the day. And then runs off as he always does.
Yep.
And Ray and Cassie, then they show this this television screen thing, and show the press there and everything, talking to Madrid. Then they cut to Ray visiting Cassie in hospital, and they're saying they're expecting the first child in 5 months' time. Yay, happy endings. But poor old David again is on his own. Doom, doom, doom. And that's how it ends. Yeah.
And that's how it ends.
So
you
do some highlights here. Fill it in on a few things you liked in it.
So you interviewed Cassie, the actress who played Cassie?
Yeah, it's Christina Hart. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So stick around, guys, for that, because at the end of this chat, I will present to you the interview I did recently with her, and she's a really lovely person to talk to.
Well, I recognize the refinery area, that big tanker place from a bunch of things before. And I liked the dune buggy that they were riding in.
That was a cool little one, wasn't it? Yeah.
And I liked the fact that in this, wasn't one of the Jacobean writers or Shakespeare who said, if you plan on revenge, you should dig 2 graves, one for yourself and one for the person that you're taking revenge on, and then one for yourself. But in this case, nobody had to. It didn't work that way, so it was pretty cool.
So no one actually got killed.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Yeah. In that situation, it could have. It was very close. It calls a couple of times, but no. Luckily, the Hulk intervened.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah. And it was all a nice happy ending at the end. She's expecting a child.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think Ray got acquitted.
Yeah.
I guess, or got some leniency anyway.
And McGee got really close to he was talking to David Banner, for crying out loud. The person you've been looking for all the time.
Without knowing it, either one of them didn't know they were talking to one another.
That's fun. That's fun when that happens.
It's nice sort of fun moment. I like when those little moments happen now and again. Yeah,
Yeah.
Or like when he near misses him in person as well. Where he goes down one corridor and he comes around the other one. That happens.
Yeah. And Alex had to take off, but I'm sure that one of his favorite moments, or his favorite moment in this episode, was the part where the hillbillies are swilling their moonshine and stuff, and it was all sort of slapstick at that point. That was Alex's favorite moment.
Yeah, some may think that was possibly a bit cheesy, but I thought it was just like a nice little comic relief moment.
Yeah.
Something they can get away with that occasionally.
Yep. Well, if you're gonna bring a Hulk with a pretty girl, and not have a bunch of old timey bootleggers. I mean, what are you gonna do? It's gonna be just another peaceful, calm down. But no, this one had to be funny too. So yay!
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was good fun. So I think it was quite a nice episode,
Yeah.
and some good performances in it too. Of course, Bill Bixby always is solid in every episode. Even if he gets one that's a bit weaker in story, he always seems to shine through, doesn't he? It makes it real,
He's
believable.
an amazing actor.
Yeah. So all in all, rather great. And so, as I say, stick around for that interview with Christina Hart that I did, coming up shortly.
And thanks for watching this episode. I've watched it a couple of times, and I mean it's fun. It's like it's a breathless one. I mean, there's hardly any spot where you can go, it's just like, whoa, and then funny, and then whoa.
Yeah, there's a lot of action in it. It's pretty much moving pretty rapidly, isn't it?
Yep, breathless.
More of an action role.
No time to think. Yep, most definitely.
And thank you, in the meantime, Sue, and in his absence, Alex as well.
Yes, you're welcome.
And
Rawr!
whatever you do, Sue, don't Hulk out.
Okay.
I'm now joined by an actress who had a co-starring role in Vendetta Road as Cassie Floyd. It's none other than actress Christina Hart. Christina, welcome to the Incredible Hulk podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be on the show.
Oh, you're really welcome. Christina, you've been in a lot of notable television series.
Yeah. I have an extensive career in television for sure. So I did start in film. I started with a movie called Red Sky at Morning with Richard Thomas and Desi Arnaz Jr. It was a beautiful film. It was a book made into a film. So that's how I got my Screen Actors Guild card. I did that movie and then some other movies, but yes, mostly my career has been in television.
One particular television that you did was obviously about a controversial subject, and there's been a couple of films in production, I think, recently about Charles Manson. Yes. And so it's coming into the fore again about the Manson murders and so on. And you were in a television version called Helter Skelter, which is, of course, a Beatles song, and about Charles Manson and the cult that he had around him. And you were, I'm right in saying you were one of the cult members, the character you played?
Yes, I played Patricia Krenwinkel. She was the only member of that group that went on the murderous evening that went to both locations, Sharon Tate's and the La Bianca's. She went to both locations, and she's the only person, obviously, that murdered people at both locations, Patricia Krenwinkel. And she is still alive and imprisoned. So, yeah.
How was that to work on, Christina?
Sorry?
How was that to work on?
Well, at the time, when you're an actor, especially back in the day, there were only 5 television stations. Now there's like hundreds. But when I was working, you knew the major projects that were coming down the pike. And everybody wanted to be involved with that because it was amazing. So I knew that was going to be done. And I went out, and there's pictures in the book of the main people, well, all of them really that were living on the ranch. But there's pictures of the main people that went on these nights that Stephen Railsback, who played Charlie Manson, that Manson ordered these people to go and commit these murders. So there's pictures of them. So I had pictures of myself taken by a photographer and tried to emulate actually a different character in the book because I'm small and blonde, and there's another character in the book that went state's evidence. She testified against everybody, but she didn't go, or she went. I think she waited in the car. So I actually wanted to play that part because I physically resembled her. So I had pictures taken looking like her in the same kind of outfits and stuff, and then your agent submits them to casting. So I got called in. I didn't get that part. I got a different part. But it was quite an experience because even to this day, that is the best film or television ever done on that era. Because it wasn't gory. It wasn't about blood and guts. It was about psychology and his psychology. And it was the highest rated CBS television movie ever. So I think it was in 2 parts. And the director was cautious and yet really represented the time. Stephen Railsback was nothing less than brilliant. He's the best Charles Manson there's ever been. And it's interesting because when you're in that environment, you sort of remain in that environment. And when he first came to the set, it was jaw-dropping what makeup and hair and if anyone has a chance to see it, he really embodied Charles Manson, physically, emotionally, psychologically. So it was a great theatrical and film and career experience, and it was a long shoot, which nowadays they don't do that much. They wouldn't spend that much time, but because there was a lot of money in this project, and it was a long shoot. We shot on the actual ranch where these people lived, and we got a lot of threats, and we had to be they had a lot of security around that ranch. We used the real car that when they went to the Labianska house. We didn't use the Tate residence because they don't allow it, and that's fine. You know, they didn't use that residence, but we did use some of the real places, and I think it turned out quite representative of how that was at that time. It created so much fear in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. Everybody thought this was a movement, and of course it wasn't, but and it got me a lot of work because that's when you're involved in prestigious projects. Afterwards, you get a lot of interviews, you get a lot of auditions. People want to talk about the project, and also everybody in the project was good, very good. So now you're associated with a project that was good. So I would say that kind of kicked off my career, even though I had done things before that. It kicked off my career because even Lorimar did that movie of the week, and The Blue Knight, which was a television series with George Kennedy, was also with Lorimar. And so after I did that, that television show asked for me, and I auditioned to be on a couple episodes of The Blue Knight, which I ultimately did with George Kennedy, and we had a wonderful working relationship. And he actually sponsored me into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences because you have to have a sponsor. So really that all came from Helter Skelter. And then George Kennedy was going to do another series that didn't work out, but if it had worked out, I would have been his daughter on that series. So, yeah, it was good. That, Hollywood works that way when you're a young, upcoming actor. What I did back then, now there are so many actors and there's so much product on cable and, Netflix and everything, but then there wasn't that much product. So once you started working, you worked for a lot of the same directors, and they would bring you. That's still true, but it's just that there's so much more work now for actors. But that jump-started my career, and then I did The Rookies for Aaron Spelling, and because that worked out so well, I ended up doing a lot of different shows for Aaron Spelling, and actually being under contract to him to do a television series called The Daughters of Joshua Cave, which did not go on, but we did the pilot. So, yeah, I would say that Helter Skelter was very instrumental in helping me to have a good television career. Was that a really long answer?
Oh, I was going to mention, Christina. Sorry to interrupt you there. I was going to mention about Steve Railsback, who played Manson who played the character of Manson in Helter Skelter. Years later, played a real life serial killer, Ed Gein.
Right.
A very famous story of a guy called Ed Gein, which was the inspiration for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow.
because he killed and ate his victims. So it was pretty grim. And this is a real life person, by the way, in small town America. And Steve played the title character, the killer. Years and years later, this was. I think the early noughties or something.
He also did a movie called Stuntman. Did you ever see that?
No.
He was brilliant in that. I think that Helter Skelter typecast Steve Railsback because he teaches acting now, by the way, in Hollywood. But he's a brilliant actor, but that character is so specific. And when you're playing people like that, or the other one that you mentioned, you have to have a great intensity. And that's what he has. He has steel eyes. In fact, they wrote about him when he did Charles Manson, and they said he never blinked, which is an acting technique. That's not something that he just fell upon. So when I rewatched it, I said, "Oh my God, he never blinked," and that kind of stuff is creepy.
Yes.
So yeah. So he obviously is amazing at character work because he's a sweet, darling, wonderful guy. So he's just really good at character work, and he's very good at intensity. And he studied in New York, and he's a very serious actor. But I think that those roles typecast him a little bit. Sometimes it's hard to get outside of that when you're so good at doing roles like that. But yeah. Also, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Marilyn Burns was in Helter Skelter. And Marilyn Burns
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we lived together after Helter Skelter because we were all young, We were roommates after we did Helter Skelter, and she lived with Tobe Hooper, who was her boyfriend, who directed Helter Skelter. So the three of us lived together in Hollywood for about a year and remained friends for quite some time.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
She sadly passed, didn't she?
Yes.
Marilyn, yeah.
Yeah, and she had moved back to Texas, so we weren't really in touch very much. But, yes, and she's relatively young, and quite beautiful, and I didn't know that she was even in ill health. But somebody that knew her in Texas said that it was surprising that she had died. It wasn't like she had a long illness with cancer or something. I'm not sure really how she died, but yes, sadly she did.
What was really amazing about that film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was her screaming in it. I mean, I mean, the screaming, but wow, man, she pushed the boat out there. That looked so exhausting that apparently I mean, how many hours must she have spent screaming? It was very incredibly intense.
That was just Tobe Hooper's home camera in Texas. They didn't have any money or anything when they made that movie.
That was really unsettling, Her screaming was really unsettling,
Well, that certainly kicked off her career. She hadn't done anything before that.
Yeah.
And now the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a cult film, that will be around forever, like cult fiction or something.
Yeah. There's a big fan base for it. Yeah.
Yes, there is, yeah. And they've remade it several times, but I'm sure not as well as the first one.
No, that would take a lot to top. I'm afraid that was a classic, of horror.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It definitely was a classic. Yeah.
It really was. So you also were in, something really notable. I'm only picking a few out. There's numerous ones you've done, and you can share any little memories that may come to you, Christina, on these. Just briefly, you were in Happy Days. You were in Charlie's Angels. The $6 Million Man, The Fantastic Journey, and Airwolf, just to name a few.
And please don't forget one of my favorites, Three's Company.
Three's Company, exactly. That's true, yeah, with John Ritter.
Yes. So, I would say that Happy Days, Three's Company, and Charlie's Angels are certainly some of my fondest memories. Happy Days I did several times, and John Ritter was as amazing, wonderful, funny, and kind as his reputation quotes about him. It was a wonderful set to work on. And I did the highest rated Happy Three's Company ever, because do you remember the Ropers? The Ropers were there before Don Knotts. The Ropers were the people that managed the apartment complex.
Now this was based, Christina, wasn't it? I think on Man About the House, the British comedy version of it.
Yes, which we do a lot here. We're constantly copying, as The Office.
That's right, The Office. Yeah.
The best of the English sitcoms stuff. Yeah, and so the Ropers thought that the John Ritter character was gay. That's the only reason back in the day they allowed him to live with two women when none of them were married. So they had a niece, and she came to visit, and they wanted her to. I played the Ropers' niece. And they wanted her to go out, and they only allowed her to go out with him because they thought he was gay. So, of course, she's a little seductress. I played a lot of seductress kinds of girls back then. So she goes out with John Ritter, and they come back to the Roper's house, and she seduces him, and they had a breakaway dress. So the character breaks her dress away, and it falls off, and John Ritter was drinking a beer. So when in the show. So when she drops her dress, he opens the beer can, and the film shoots up to the ceiling. And the audience went crazy when he did that. And it is still one of the scenes from that show that anybody that has ever loved Three's Company says, "Oh my God, the beer scene." And I say that because he was such a brilliant comedian. He was a Jerry Lewis, very physical, really funny comedian. And he was wondering in rehearsal, what am I going to do when she drops that dress? Because you have to do something, especially on a show like Three's Company.
Yeah.
So he shook that can just before the camera started running, so that when she drops the thing, he pops the can, it shoots to the air, and the Ropers walk into the room at exactly the same time.
Yes. That's comedy timing thing, yeah.
It's perfect timing, and that's the kind of actor that he was. So I loved being on that show. And then I was on Happy Days several times. It's interesting. In my career, I have no bad stories. So I didn't have any other than not getting parts that I wanted, which happened a lot.
Yeah.
But I really don't have any. I didn't have any bad stories. And on Happy Days, that was another good set where everyone got along. I auditioned for that show 8 times before I got my first one.
Wow.
And I was sitting out in the lobby area, or the waiting area where the actors wait when they're about to audition. And the casting lady walked through the room, and she said, "Oh my God, they better give you this one." And I myself was thinking, yes, I've been here enough times. So I got it, and then I did several episodes. I worked with everybody on that show, and I think it's well known the reputation that Ron Howard has for being talented and a good person to work with. Obviously, Henry Winkler. There's never any nastiness about any of these people, and that is how the set was. It was really fun. The first year, they didn't have an audience. It was an actual filmed show.
Huh.
I did that one, and then the rest of the years, it was 3-camera live audience.
Yeah.
So I did that show several times. And then the interesting thing about Charlie's Angels is my really intro into Aaron Spelling was on The Rookies. And I went up for a part, a Southern girl that's a baton player, and they were criminals. And I didn't get the part. And I thought, I am so right for this. And sometimes that happens with actors, I'm very good at accents, and so I thought, I'm so right for this. And I went back to my agent's office, and I said, it was a week after I had been on the first audition. And I said, I don't know why I didn't get that Rookies. And so he goes, let me call them. And I remember it was about 5 at night. So he called over to the studio. And he said, and they were having trouble casting this part. And he said, Christina Hart is in my office. Why don't you see her again? So I didn't know the first time I auditioned that these characters were from Texas. So when I ran over to the studio, it was at 20th Century Fox, as I was going in, sometimes casting directors will root for you and they'll help you because they like your work. So when I was going in, the casting director said, do a Texas accent. And I said, oh, okay. And honestly, I was thinking, really? They wouldn't have told this to the actors the last time? But, so I did, and I also twirled the baton because I do know how to twirl a baton. This girl didn't have to throw it up in the air or anything, but I could certainly twirl a baton quite well enough to have been a batoner. So they had a baton in the office. And I did the Texas accent, I twirled the baton, and right then and there they said, you have the part. I did that part that got me into Aaron Spelling. I did most of his shows after that. But what's really funny is that when they gave me the part, they had an offer out to Farrah Fawcett, and then she wasn't known. So they were looking for our look, you know, this smallish, blondish girl, and so I got it. Well, here we go, years later, or not that many years later, but a while later, she's one of Charlie's Angels. And then I did the potato field scene. That's the only one of those that I did. But the prison scene on Charlie's Angels. Of course, I never told her, by the way, because I'm sure by then she didn't care. But yeah, so that was how that came full circle.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah.
And the other funny thing about Farrah Fawcett is recently, maybe about a year ago, I did one of those, the first one I've ever done. It was called the 70 Stars or something. I did one of those fan events. I didn't really honestly even know what these were. But there's a manager named Mike Marks who's a friend of mine, and I have a friend who does horror films, does these fan things all over the world, and everybody knows her from these horror films that she does. So he said, do you want to do this 70s event? And I thought, I guess so. So, not knowing what to expect, so it was at this beautiful hotel, and they don't give you a lot of information when you're doing these things. And he told me to bring headshots. And honestly, I thought, wouldn't people rather get pictures from the shows that you're doing? Why would they just want your headshot like 25 years later or something? Now, he didn't tell me this, but I just went quickly and printed up a lot of stuff from the shows that I had already done. Thank God, because nobody was interested in my headshot. People are interested in the work that you've done. So I got there, and what was really funny was you sit at a table, and people come up to you, and they get your autograph, and they ask you stuff. And it was really fun. Everybody's really friendly. It was amazing. When I walked in, this lady hugged me, and she said, "Oh, I came from Ohio to meet you." And I thought, "You did?" and we chatted for a really long time. And the people are just lovely there. But the two funniest things that happened was this Australian news team came. So they came up to my table, and they said, "Hi, we wanted to ask you all about Farrah Fawcett." And I said, "Well, I don't know very much about her, but sure." And they said, "We just came to the event to find anybody who had ever worked with Farrah Fawcett." And I said, "All the way from Australia?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, well, we were in prison together, and we picked potatoes, and she was very nice. We didn't have cell phones back then. So we rode in, the drivers drove us around together. You had to be driven to the phone, because we were out in the boondocks in this prison place. And so whenever you needed to make a phone call, they had to drive you. So doesn't that sound like it's 100 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
So we were often in the car together, and I remember it was the first season. And when you're on the first season of something, you don't know what's going to happen. But these three girls, all they talked about, because you get the scuttlebutt coming down from the head of the studio, the scuttlebutt was, this is going to be the biggest show on television. And all three of those girls didn't have careers before then. So they were really excited, and they talked about it all the time, that they knew they were on a hit show. Of course, we all know that Farrah left, but anyway, so yeah, I was on that show, and I was on that show with Kim Basinger. She was on that show too, and we rode to and from work every day, and I remember her being like the most beautiful person I'd ever seen in my life. And she, who then, went on to do a few movies and marry Alec Baldwin. But yeah, those were the early days. We were on that show together, and that was a good show too. Everybody was excited that this was happening and that it was going to be something. And after that, I did The Daughters of Joshua Cade. That's one of my biggest disappointments. It was a Western. Aaron Spelling made that Western pilot 3 times with different actresses because he really wanted it to work. For some reason, it didn't. I don't know why it didn't. I loved doing that show, and I thought, oh my God, if I could do a series where it's a Western. I love period things. And, but it didn't work, but we had a great time shooting the pilot.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You, now of course, we're getting on to the main point here, the main crux of things. when you were cast in the Incredible Hulk, playing a character called Cassie Lloyd, alongside Ray Lloyd, played by Ron Lombard.
Right.
And
Ron Lombard had been in a movie, oh my gosh. So whatever movie he was in, so it was, they were going to the moon. It was a movie where they go to the moon, and he's in the science room, where they're watching the rockets. And he was a sweet guy, and he was that movie kicked off his career. I can't think of the name of it, but we sat in the lobby talking about it, I remember. And we had worked together. So we were talking about this, and we already had sort of a charisma and a connection, which is really helpful. And they brought us in together to the audition. And when you have that with somebody, that's what happened on The Rookies, too, with Hopkins and I. We just had an instant, good, charismatic connection. So it was as if we were friends already. And that's what happened with Ron. And so we auditioned together, and quite quickly, the same day, which doesn't happen often, but the same day they told us that we were both doing The Incredible Hulk.
Now the director,
he was great to work with.
Yeah, the director of this story was John McPherson. What do you remember about him?
I just remember, and I have worked on shows where there's a lot of sort of dangerous stunt work, or dangerous things happening in it. I did the Runaway Barge in St. Louis, and there was a lot of dangerous stuff, not for me, but there was dangerous stuff in that particular television movie, and people got injured on that. And also I did something in Hawaii called Big Hawaii, where the director wanted me to surf, and I said, I don't surf. And if Michael Parks hadn't been the star of that show and said to the director, she's not going into the ocean, they put this upon you, and actors always want to do what's asked of them. So I remember in The Incredible Hulk how cautious and careful they were with the fire, and that's the director, because and the stunt manager, but they're calling the shots on all of this kind of stuff. And a lot of it they lay in later. But I remember that. I remember that he was, very concerned and careful about the things that we were doing, the way that we were driving, because we're really doing it. That there's a lot of talk about that. And when you're an actor, it makes you feel safe on a set. And that was probably already established on that show, because every show did a lot of sort of stunt kinds of work. But on that, so they probably already had that established by the time I got on the show, the way they worked it. But, I just remember him. It's not really an actor show, even though Bill Bixby is a great actor. It's more an action show. So there's not a lot of talk about emotion or how scenes are going to be played, but I feel that when you're on a show like that, they just hire actors that can already do whatever's asked of them. And I've heard other directors say that too. We just know that when we don't have time to spend a lot of time on rehearsal, which they never do on television, we're going to make sure that these are actors that you just say action and they're ready to do whatever the scene requires. And when you've done a lot of work, you can usually do that. Not all the time, but usually. So there wasn't a lot of acting kinds of direction. But, it was a relationship show, so I had a good one with Ron. Bill Bixby was just the kindest man in the world. Very, very sweet man. And it seemed to have a really good relationship with the Hulk, and everything went quite smoothly. It was fun.
Now you and your character in it and your partner in it were in the synopsis that I read were sort of classed as like modern day Bonnie and Clyde.
Yes, yes, but we were good guys because nothing happened to us.
No, and you didn't kill anyone, or you nearly killed Bill at one point, but you got him out of there, so that's all right,
Yes, yes, and you know what? It's really interesting because you think about that long ago. It really had a similar theme to my daughter's show, Mr. Robot, because it was the oil company that Ron's character, they did something to Ron's character's father, so we were really revenge people. We were good people taking out bad people, and so that's why. And remember, my character was pregnant too.
That's right.
So yeah, she was pregnant, and they were in love, and so even though we weren't evil. We were just revenging the oil company, the bad oil company people, and they're still bad. So.
Yeah, nothing's changed there, has it?
No, nothing's changed there.
It's all about the oil.
Right. Exactly.
It is. It really is. You know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oil and equals power, money. You know, greed.
Yeah.
Corporate greed.
We've certainly got a lot of that going on in America right now.
Oh, it all centers around that. Unfortunately, you know, it really does. So yeah, I mean that's you know the crux of that story. You know the reasons against an oil company.
Yeah, their motivation. It was their motivation.
Yeah,
and that's why the Hulk was saving them.
Yeah,
you know, because although they were going around doing all this stuff, and my character didn't want to do it, but yeah, they were revenging the bad people. So that's why the Hulk kept saving them.
Yeah, yeah. He got Bixby. I mean, you know, as David Banner got kind of like roped into it in, you know, an unwilling like third party. You know, because he was initially just going to leave, and then and then someone was firing at him from a bush, and he ended up getting picked up by you again. So he kind of got roped into the story. What he was not really wanting to be involved initially. You know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But that's how the narrative pushed it forward, you know.
And I think I might have. So I don't know. This is really interesting to me about superheroes because I've learned it lately how important superheroes are to children. And not long after the Hulk, I was on an airplane. And I was reading a story about the Incredible Hulk and how a little girl that was because also, he was. The guy that played him was deaf, and so a little girl that was in I think first or second grade, that was her superhero, and she was not deaf but hard of hearing, and how whenever she felt stressed or sad about herself or anything, she would sort of summon up that character, and she had a lot of characters, she had a lot of pictures and things like that in her room, and I remember reading that story years and years ago. Now we sort of know that about kids and Spider-Man and stuff. But years and years ago, there weren't a lot of those kinds of superheroes on television and films. Now the Marvel comics and everything, they're sort of everywhere. But back then they weren't so much. And Popeye, but that's even way before the Hulk. And I remember reading that and thinking, that's really interesting. Because it is a fantasy, of course, but how children can take those fantasies into their own lives and they can use them effectively. So it's kind of the point, that you turn into this sort of hulking fantasy figure to do good in the world. And then how can you do that in your own life? So I just remember reading that story on a plane. Probably it was an article about him or about that show or something, and that was wrapped into that article, but it was quite interesting.
There were a couple of scenes in Vendetta Road, Christina, that I wanted to ask you about, that you were involved in, because it's just kind of interesting to me as to what you remember of them. The scene, the shootout in the cabin, looked pretty good. Can you remember how that? Were you kind of talked through that? I guess with a stunt coordinator or.
Yes. And we were rehearsed that scene many times. Because, they put those, I'm sorry, it's so long ago, I don't remember what they're called, but they put those things on your body that explode out.
Oh, they're like blood bags or something, or
and also
bladders or something, yeah.
Yeah, because the shot place explodes out. And so they're on your body. And then, of course, they have that all over the cabin, too. But, yeah, we would talk through that, and we rehearsed it several times. It was very safe. I never felt anything unsafe, that there was anything unsafe going on there. And once again, it it's fun when it's like a child playing cowboys or shootouts, you know. So it was fun. It was intense. It was loud and quite realistic. When for that time, you know, there's no CGI back then. They can put things in later, like some of the fire explosions. They didn't do that while we were actually at the gas station. They can put that in later, but they're not CGIing this stuff. You know, these explosions are really happening all over the cabin. And in fact, my husband did show early in his career, I don't know which one, but whatever the explosion was, it nearly blew out one of his eardrums. Oh. So way back in the day, they didn't do as much fake stuff, you know, as they do now.
It was practical effects. It was actually live effects, mostly. Right. Yeah.
Mhm. So that was a really good, intense scene. It happened as it looked, you know. And of course, we were way far away for any of the fire stuff. There was never any fire things that were going on near us.
Yeah.
But they did blow things up.
You did a good bit of acting in it when you took that shot in your shoulder. The way you fell back, that was quite good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I love doing stuff like that. You know, like throwing my body back against the wall, and yes. And on a show like that, it's, as I was saying earlier, sometimes there's not a whole lot of acting because it's so much about all the stuff that's going on around you. But I remember being able to have a character and to be in love with my husband and worried about my baby and just kind of run the gamut and throwing myself against the wall and then being carried out. So, yeah, I think I did a fair bit of acting.
The other scene that was really funny, I thought, Christina, was the scene with the hillbillies. You know, those bunch of moonshiners.
But, you know, that's the kind of thing that would never work today.
No.
You know, I remember that scene thinking, oh, really? Yeah. I mean, they did what was asked of them.
Yeah.
And that show has that kind of thing on it. You know, it's got sort of goofy stuff going along with it. And it never feels unlike some of the darker things nowadays. You always know that people are going to be okay when you're watching a show like that, which is also the point. You know, you're going to see everybody go through all these rough times or whatever, dangerous situations, but everyone's going to be okay. So, that's that period of television. And, yes, I remember that scene well. I don't know, to me it's like it was goofy, but it's not believable. And for me, everything, you know, that's just the kind of actress I am, but even if you're going to do that kind of stuff, it's just, I feel like if people watched it today, they'd be, oh, I don't know about this particular thing. Although I've seen that in movies, I do that even now. You know, I'll watch great movies and go, really? Did they need that scene? So, I remember this scene, Frank. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, it was just kind of goofy, but it was kind of like, I suppose, like a light relief, a little bit of a moment with a bit of light relief,
exactly.
You know.
And that is 70s television.
Yeah.
Because when I was in the Rookies, we were playing Bonnie and Clyde too, only we were bad.
Yeah.
So, and they modeled it after Bonnie and Clyde. But there was comic relief in that too. And I think that, you know, that kind of television back in the day, it wasn't like Breaking Bad, you know, where you were like, oh my God, this is like intense. Even the cop shows and everything were way more relief from your day. And yeah, it was comic relief, and they did a good job with that.
Yeah. Right. Getting on to, sadly, and I have before, Christina, but I'd like to say on here as well, my deepest condolences for the loss of your husband, Frank.
Thank you.
Frank Doubleday, who was also an actor himself as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he was brilliant, and that's an interesting story about the 70s event that I went to. Of course, Frank was still living then, and when I was at that event, Frank and I had a place in California we like to go called Morro Bay. It's a beautiful little place, and I was at this event, and this gentleman came up to me, and he had all kinds of posters in poster containers and stuff. And he said, I thought your husband would be with you. And I said, no. And he said, because I'm a huge fan. And Frank wasn't well at that time either, so this would have been maybe 7 or 8 months before he died. And he wasn't well, but he was okay. You know, we still had quite a lovely life together. And so this person said, oh, because I brought all these things from Escape from New York, because Escape from New York is a cult film, and Frank started his career with John Carpenter.
That's right.
And, yeah, and so in Assault on Precinct 13.
Yes, that was the first one, yeah. Film. That was the first one, and then Escape from New York, yeah.
Yes, and so this gentleman, I said, well, he's not with me. And then I thought, what a beautiful thing. He came a long way, too. I think fans are amazing. So I thought, you came this far to bring those posters because you thought Frank was going to be here? And he's not listed on the, when you look it up. There's no reason for anybody to think Frank would be there. So I said, and he said, I have every autograph on my Escape from New York poster except for Frank. And so I said, and you know, when Frank died, John Carpenter wrote a beautiful tribute to him. They have a fan site in Italy, a fan thing, like what you have for the Hulk. They have that for Escape from New York, many places. And so I said, I will take those posters home, and I give you my word, Frank will sign them. And the funny thing was, he was from Morro Bay. So once he told me that, it's a small world, Frank, you know, it's a small world. Mm-hmm. Once he told me that, I said, that's my favorite place. So, I took the posters home and got that because it was a 2-day event, and this guy was staying in the motel overnight in the hotel to come to the event. So I took the posters home, and then Frank signed all of his stuff, and I took it back to him the next day, and we still keep in slight contact, this gentleman and myself, through Facebook, kind of like you and I.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's really lovely, that. Yeah, that's nice.
Yes. Yeah. And Frank was just brilliant, very smart, genius, great actor, great director, and amazing person. It's a big loss to me and everybody who knew him well.
And incidentally, Frank was also in a Hulk episode.
Yes, he was.
Called
he did a lot of television too.
Yeah, it was called Fastlane. When did you first meet Frank?
Okay, so let's see. Katie was born in 84, maybe 78.
78,
yes, around
right.
19.
Yeah.
Something around there. Yes. We met in a theater company, and we met doing a play.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we met actually doing the play Dylan. And Frank was a classically trained actor, which I am not. And so he brought so much enrichment to my life in that way. He was a very, very serious actor. And, yeah, we met, I think I'd have to honestly look, but I think it was around 78. Could have been a little earlier, 69. Yeah, 77 or 78. And yeah, I didn't see that Hulk, but we did a lot of the same television shows. Once again, the acting pool was smaller, and the amount of product and content was smaller. So we called them working actors. So a lot of actors who worked regularly did a lot of the same shows.
Yeah. Yes, that was quite common then, wasn't it? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to now, yeah.
And he did a lot of, Frank had a rough look, you call it, bad guy look, or whatever you want to say. He did a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, where he was almost always the bad guy in a show. He did Robert Blake's show, did a wonderful part on whatever that series was called. And he did a wonderful movie called The First Nudie Musical. He is hysterical in that. He wears a leather jacket and he sings, and he was just so good in that too. So, yeah, he has a good extensive career as well.
Now, also, your daughters, your two daughters, Portia and Caitlin, are also both actresses, and are doing quite well. Can you tell us a little bit about what they've been up to?
Sure. So my firstborn daughter, Caitlin Doubleday, she's an actress, and she has a very good career in film and television. Her first film was a Sundance. Honestly, I don't remember what it was, but also she has a cult film called Waiting, which is about waiters. Justin Long is in that film, and I didn't know that film had a cult following until everywhere we go they say, "Was your daughter in Waiting?" So she did that. She did a lot of television, and then she actually, what sort of helped her to get her career rolling was she played Rhonda on Empire, which was, and probably still is, the most successful black series. And she was on that show. It filmed in Chicago. She was on that show for 2 years, and that show was still quite successful. Then they killed her off, and then she went to Nashville, and she did the show Nashville for 2 seasons, and then that show ended. So she's had a very good career. She's here now in California because she's going to have a baby next month. So
wonderful! Yeah.
Time. Yeah, thank you. We're very excited, and the baby's name is going to be Franklin. It's a boy, and he'll be born next month.
Good. It's a good name, Christina. Yeah.
Thank you.
I speak from experience. Yeah.
That's right. So we're very excited about having that baby come, and so she's off. She was for the last 6 months, and she'll be off probably for another 6 months while she's getting herself settled with her baby, and then she'll go back to work. And then my other daughter, Portia Doubleday, she started in Youth in Revolt, was the first movie that she did, and that was one of those projects, too, that, you know, in Hollywood, this is going to be big. And she actually hadn't done very much when she got that. So she got that. She was the lead with Michael Cera. It's a lovely, lovely movie. And then she's had quite a career. She's done a lot of films. She did Carrie, the remake of Carrie, and she did this fabulous movie called Cinderella where she plays a guy and a girl. It was shot in Canada. It's a delightful comedy, and she plays the characters, the guy and the girl. It's just a very sweet film. And then she's on the series Mr. Robot. This will be the last season. She plays Angela, and that season is going to be season 4, and it'll end this year. They're shooting it now. And she's in Fiji right now shooting the remake of Fantasy Island. So they're both doing well, and we're very grateful and thankful for that, because even though there's a lot of products now with cable, acting is a very difficult lifestyle, and it's very unsettling. So you still don't know if the job you're doing now will be your last job. And I've even heard very established actors say sometimes they think that way. You know, will this be my last movie? And eventually it will be. So all of us in life. But in acting, that can happen at quite a young age. So it's a financially very unsettling lifestyle, but also very rewarding.
Yes.
So yeah, we're grateful and thankful. Frank was really proud of them. And they're good people too. So I'm very grateful and thankful to have my children, since I don't have my husband. And my friends, like you, Frank.
I'm here if you ever want to talk, Christina. I mean that.
Well, thank you. You're very sweet and kind. And it's interesting. When Frank died, I got so much support from around the world. And we just live a regular, normal life. You know, I was like, wait a second. People from Italy are calling me? So I didn't know there was a fan base in Italy for him. So I did answer a lot of his email, and I would lay in bed next to him, and he would get interviewed like you're doing with me. He would get interviewed about Escape from New York, and I would ask him the questions and answer it in the email. But a lot of times people ask you things that you just don't remember because it was so long ago. And one of the papers, this is from England too. There's a guy in England that loves Escape from New York, and he keeps wanting to figure out who one character is in this scene who's not a major actor. And so we looked at the picture and we go, we don't know. We have no idea who he's playing an extra. So how do we know who this guy is? It's like 30 years ago. But I love that people have this fascination and have this hobby. I think it's just beautiful and amazing. We wouldn't have jobs if people didn't enrich their lives this way. We wouldn't even be working. So I actually love that. And when that happened with Frank, I was so proud, and I felt so grateful.
Now what are you currently doing yourself, Christina? Any projects on the go?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I was very, very busy before Frank died. And I was talking to my daughter about this, and I go to a grief group. So to any of your listeners who also may have lost somebody near and dear to them. I've learned, to get support where you can, to be around other people who have lost their loved ones. It'll be a year, but it always feels like a day. So I haven't been doing anything creative, and I've been invited. I'm a member of the Actors Studio, which is the most prestigious acting group in New York and in California. I mean, in the West Coast and the East Coast. So I've been involved with them for years, and I've written for them, and I've been a playwright, and I like writing plays, and Frank was very encouraging and had a wonderful use of language. So, and he helped me a lot. So I've been invited by the Actors Studio to be a major participant in a lot of the things that they're doing here. So I went to the meeting, and there's like 13 people that would be sort of running this. Anyway, to put a long story short, it's very challenging to be motivated. And I remember that I produced something for Mel Brooks' daughter-in-law. Her name is Michelle. And we were working together on her play. And Mel Brooks funded it for her, and he was around a lot. And she told me, I never forgot this because of my situation now. She told me that when Anne Bancroft died, Mel Brooks didn't write for 5 years. And I said, why? And she said, because he wrote for Annie. And I mean, but Mel Brooks is renowned. His plays are running now. And she said, he just wrote for Annie. He would come home and he would read it to her and she would laugh. And I didn't understand that as well then, because now Mel Brooks is back to his old self, even though he's in his 90s. He's having a wonderful life. But now it takes a great, great deal of creative energy to act, write, or direct. It's the most rewarding if you're an artist, but it does take all of your energy. Yeah. Like I can work, I can clean my house, and I can't wait till my grandchild comes. That's a different kind. That's a daily life. I get through my daily life pretty well. But the kind of energy it takes for creative projects, I don't have it right now. And my daughter, and somebody else just called me and said, and asked me to do a project with them, not far away, an acting project, do Streetcar Named Desire and play Eunice, who lives. It's a wonderful part. But my first reaction is, and I realized it's not because I don't love the art dearly, because I do. I go to movies all the time. I'm a voting member of the Academy. I hope Roma wins this year. I love watching beautiful things, but the energy to do it myself, I don't have it right now. And my beautiful daughter said to me last night, well, you'll get that back. So she's encouraging me to say yes. Even if when I'm there, I'm not excited. It's hard to have joy when you've lost the love of your life.
Yes.
So I don't have the particular kinds of joy that I used to have. But I remember even when Frank was sick, he said, you'll always write, you're a great writer. And I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. Anyway, when things like this happen, you're sort of enveloped in them, and it hasn't been that long. But I do want my enthusiasm for my work to return. So in my grief group the other night, the leader, she said, well, all of you have lost your identity. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. That's it. And that happens to everyone, no matter what of life you're in, So I just thought, yes, well, identity can return as long as you don't cocoon yourself. So I'm trying to say, I do say yes to things even that I don't want to do, because I think through that process, you'll just get your own sense of self back, if that makes any sense. And I don't know, if any readers are listening, I love all of you, and I thank you so much for liking the television that you do watch and for taking an interest in those of us who do this work. And even doing this interview today is helping me in my grief and in my love of film and television and actors and directors and writers. And I say it again, if it wasn't for podcasts and fans and interview shows and all of that, there would be no one to do this for.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Christina, for talking to me today.
Absolutely.
It's been lovely. It's been lovely speaking with you.
And thank you again for letting me do your podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been really lovely. This has. It's been a lovely chat. And
thank you.
And so thank you, Christina, and thank you guys for listening too. We'll be back with another Incredible Hulk podcast very soon. So until then, guys, take care.